Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. We're going to give it a couple of seconds, and we know how the Digiverse is. We got to wait for folks to come in. If this is your first time joining us, well, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LA SBDC offers no cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicating to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, I felt that one because, it's like small biz talks. It's all about entrepreneurs. And I'm like, yes, let's talk about entrepreneurs.
I know because isn't now I could be wrong because I've lost total track of my week, Sadie, but isn't this week small biz business week?
It is
I
upcoming. I cannot neither
I
confirm nor
can't remember if
deny.
it's this week or next week, but happy small business week or happy pre-small business week. I literally have lost track of my weeks, but yeah, we have to make a mention of that on whichever date it is. I think it's this week though. Maybe somebody in the audience knows. Anybody know is this National Small Business Week? I think it's actually this week, guys. So I'm going to just say shout out to small businesses because that's what I'm going to talk about anyway. May 4th to 10th. So yes, thank you, Robert. So, okay, it's official, Sadie. Happy Small Business Week.
Woo,
Did you like that,
woo, woo,
guys?
woo.
We should add balloons and everything. It just dawned on me when Sadie said that. Okay, we got a great show today, and I got a couple things I want to go over with you. First of all, on the SBA loans for the fire victims, answering questions specific to the SBA loans. We're no longer going to be doing it on Thursday. We're getting less of a demand. We're focusing it on Tuesday. So if you are joining us for that, know it will still be held on Tuesday. I have my financial literacy session 2 and 3 still coming up. If you missed one, you can definitely jump in 2 and 3. Once again, guys, financial management, so important. Sole Prop LLC and S Corp, which one and why? Still lots of confusion on that. Jump in on that webinar or feel free to reach out to me if you're not sure if you're keeping up on your documentation, you've got your statement of information, you've paid your $800 franchise tax fee, etc. Because I cannot tell you, going through the disaster loans with the fire situation, the number of people that get denied, and then I pull up the public record and find out they are not in good standing, or they're still in good standing. The franchise tax board hadn't caught up with them yet, and they basically will eventually, and they have penalties and fees. So do make sure that you know what documents you have to fill out, etc. Upcoming, we got a great lineup in May. May's a really good month. Every month's good, I guess. But next week we got Kevin. He's coming on. He's from Vertis Consultants. He's going to talk about management consultant, leadership, strategic planning, music to really entrepreneurs' ears. These are the type of things that they are always thinking about. How do I make sure I maintain leadership within myself and my company? And what do I do to grow strategically? We're going to have a lot of conversations over really management type consulting. Then May 21st, Nadine's coming on from Citrine Trademark Services. And I like to say, okay, finally got a lawyer to come on. Finally got a lawyer to come on. Can't not believe I finally did. And one of the big questions is trademarks, etc. And so I'm so glad we got somebody to come on and talk about that. And then at the end of May, we got Johnny coming on from Mantra Coffee, going to tell his entire story about how he founded the coffee shop, what the coffee shop does. That's another fascinating story to hear. Okay, today in Lori's Corner, I'm going to talk about two things. And in order to do it, I'm going to go to the actual websites right now, and Sadie is going to put that in, that meaning the links into the chat right now. So let me go to the websites I want to share. I want to talk about two different things today. And I want to start out, I got to move things out of my way so I can get to where I want to be. I want to start out by talking about something I mentioned last week. I'll mention this continuously. There is a Verizon grant that is available. I don't have a lot of information on it, guys, to, how many people are getting it, et cetera. But basically it's 10,000. You have to go through a series of, let's call it classes in order to apply. I've heard that the classes are good. I've heard people say they're boring. I've heard everything, right? You'll have to decide for yourself. But nevertheless, this is the page. This is where to go to. This is how to apply. Everything about it is here. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to go to the website, and I would like to talk about this in a little bit more detail outside of what I'm showing you. So, this is a program that Walmart is doing, and this is a shout out to those of you who obviously have products. So, it's product specific, obviously. But this is a program that Walmart's doing, and it's aiming, as they're saying, to help small businesses go big. And I love what they talk about. They talk about, Sam Walton, which if you're an old business person like I am, you read the Sam Walton story, which was fascinating. Not quite indicative of who Walmart is today, but it was a fascinating story nevertheless, right? But it was all about American made products. That's what Sam Walton was about. And what they're saying in their advertisement here, their announcement, I should actually call it, is they're going back to looking at American made products, providing small businesses with new tools and paths to success. So, what happens in this program? They got an open call in 2025, okay? And what they do is as they're stating it, I'm wanting to use their words, they make it easier for US based entrepreneurs to navigate complexities of retail and bring their products to a national stage. Now, I have had clients who have gone through a program they have offered in the past. Okay. So I don't have a ton of experience with this, but I have enough sitting, looking over somebody's shoulder as they had gone through this. And it turned out to be very beneficial to them. Now, that is obviously just this one scenario that I can speak to. So I can't say, once again, I'm giving you what I know, what I found in the news. I'm always digging for new stuff, but I can say I experienced it with one person. And so what they do is they have this academy, and this one is, I think they're launching it a little bit bigger than the ones they had in the past, but you go through a process of learning. And then what you get to do is you showcase your product. And then they also provide mentorship, and they also have some financing. I don't know a lot about the financing. The client that I worked with did not utilize their financing, so I can't speak to it. In fact, I don't know if the financing was even an option back then. Right. But I think that if you're a product based business and this makes sense, it might be of interest. It talks more about it. And the thing is to at least bookmark this page, because I am familiar with Walmart doing things in the past and offering certain things in local areas. It may not be in your area now, but it could be in the future. So while I'm on this topic, I just want to make a few more comments on American made, if I can. And I want to start out by saying I'm really reaching out to you, small businesses. I'm not trying to make any political things, so don't jump on me, okay? I know there's a lot going on right now with all the tariffs and everything, but I think something needs to be spoken about it that's not being spoken about. And back in my day, when I went to my MBA school, was really when outsourcing just began. It was the height of everything at the time. And in fact, my MBA international degree was to go to China. I was studying outsourcing. I was going to Jones Day law firms there looking at mergers and acquisitions. I toured a big outsourcing facility. I mean, I thought at one point I was going to move to Hong Kong. I was so fascinated by it. But those guys who know me, I always had a cat, right? My cats would have had to be in quarantine. I'm like, nope, nope, not doing that. But that's not the story here, right? But I was one of those that really kind of was sold, even though I questioned it coming from the small country town, that outsourcing was the way to go. Now, I'm speaking for me personally. This is my personal opinion, my personal experiences. I got to say, today I question that. And I have for some years. But that's really not the main point I'm trying to make. The main point I'm trying to make here is that entrepreneurs, what we're all about, guys, is looking for opportunity. We don't really try not to get too caught up in exactly what's happening as much as we're in the forefront going, where is our opportunity? Where's our opportunity? Well, I am starting to notice outside of Walmart, there's a lot of stores that are wanting to look for man-made, American made, I mean. And what I have also noticed, this is an alignment of two thoughts. Many of the small companies I work with have bought their products or their raw material, or they're purchasing stuff and redistributing from China. And I got to tell you, I have seen many small companies hurt by this, hurt by the fact that they have to get more inventory than they really can afford. They've had longer wait times. They've had cash flow problems. They've had quality issues that a bigger company can handle that a small company can't. And so many times I said to my small companies, can you just find some local manufacturers, at least starting out? Have some of your product made locally, because all of this confusion that you're now involved in financing is way beyond where you are at this point. And they would say to me, I'd love to, but I can't because of pricing. Well, now this could change the dynamic, right? So all I'm saying is one thing, guys, and I know you can shout out at me saying, Laura, you're crazy, or I get it, or I'm just saying, have a new perspective and just think, what is the circumstances right now that is going to maybe open up some opportunity that I'm not thinking about, that the news is not talking about? Because I think this is possibly, don't have a crystal ball, but I've been around for a while, but this could be the golden age of the small company being able to make good quality products at home at a price that people will pay for, and be able to fit into the business financial model that is safe for them. Okay, safe for them financially, safe for them legally, safe for them risk wise. And so I end with, I applaud Walmart for jumping on this bandwagon. And part of how I came upon it was a story where they were saying, well, instead of, really fighting with everything going on, they're going to focus on going back to the roots and bringing up the small business again. And I'm all about that. And so it just ends up that I'm having this conversation with you, a very heartfelt conversation with you on Small Business Week. So while we are celebrating small businesses, I am excited to introduce today Elizabeth Stoltz. She is an acupuncturist trained in traditional Chinese medicine with a background in Western medicine as a biology major with several years of experience in mental health and addiction treatment. First of all, I thought that was a fascinating background just to begin with. Now, Elizabeth founded BodyLanguage LA, which is a healing collective in Pasadena designed to provide opportunity for healing and self-expression through acupuncture, massage therapy, chiropractic care, movement, and the arts. Elizabeth, welcome. We're going to get into a whole lot more that I didn't bring up yet in your bio, because there's so much I want to really get into the details without just reading it. But thank you so much. So first of all, let's see, where do we want to go? Let's start out by saying, did you always know this is what you wanted to be? Did you know this from a kid? You obviously have gone through some twists and turns, and this is going to bring up some of your history as well. So kind of walk us through the trajectory of how you got where you are today with this interest in what you're doing.
Okay, and thank you. And thank you, Lori, and thank you, Sadie, for inviting me today. So I, I started out, actually, as I was saying earlier, I started out in the sciences, in biology. And I started out as a lab technician working in women's health, not directly in women's health, but just happened to be in a women's health lab. And then took a radical turn into education and then substance abuse. I ended up working in nonprofit for a long time, but always I was really interested in body work the whole time, ever since I was in my early 20s. I was always doing body work. I never became, I never thought I could survive on it. So it was never my primary business or anything like that. But it was always something I studied, always something I did with my friends. I was always like the person who, you know, whatever, gave the advice when we were in sports, things like that. So it was something I was always really interested in, and I got introduced to the meridian system in my early 20s. And that's when I became really fascinated with acupuncture, because that is the standout piece about acupuncture, is this meridian system that we use. I thought it was really fascinating. But then I didn't get back to it until I was in my very early 50s when I became an acupuncturist. I'm in my 60s now. But so it took a long time for me to get to this point. And but I feel like all the experience I had, especially working in nonprofit, working with addiction treatment, working with people, actually, which is what I've mostly done, and working indirectly with health. I feel like working with addiction and homeless. I actually had a federal grant from the from SAMHSA for 6 years through a larger nonprofit agency here in LA. And we had a great program that served women and children who were homeless with mental health issues. So
What's fascinating about so much was, first of all, I want to go back just for the audience that they may not know two terms. They may or may not. So I want to come back and I want to jump on two terms. When you speak of body work, people say that a lot, just so our audience understands what body work is. And then I know this could be a conversation with itself, so I'm not trying to be, but if somebody might say, what's the meridians, right? So why don't we clear up what body work is and the meridians, and then I'm going to go forth into a couple other questions about things that you said.
Good. Okay. So body work, I think body work is, massage is body work, acupuncture is body work. And I think there are those of us licensed in massage and acupuncture, we're actually licensed to touch people, as opposed to a lot of therapists who work with people, work with mental health, but are not licensed to do that. They're not licensed to do body work. So that's a really important distinction. Some people who are doing more somatic therapies start to get into, there's licensing that actually allows us to touch people. So that's a really important aspect of body work, is that we're actually licensed to work on bodies with bodies.
Gotcha.
So, and to me, that's a really important aspect of the work. I mean, I also do craniosacral therapy. So, and working with the nervous system, you really connecting with the body, even if it's just like lightly putting hands on someone's feet, that can be a profound connection. So that is body work, or a lot of what body work is. Within the world of body work, there's so much that people are doing. It's because there's a lot of, it used to be that Eastern and Western medicine were really different. And we're coming from really very, very different, they still are, the training in Eastern and Western medicine is really different, but there's so much more integrated and integrative medicines right now that it's not so unusual. And then practitioners like myself, we've got a great, there's so much that we can learn because as licensed practitioners, we have to continue our education all the time in order to keep our license. So there's so many areas where we can expand into. We can be, people ask about the difference between dry needling and regular acupuncture, and working more with Western anatomy and Eastern anatomy. So Eastern anatomy is more what I'm referring to with the meridian systems. It's not called Eastern anatomy. I'm using that term right now to distinguish it from Western. Western is like the skeletal system, the musculoskeletal system, and the nervous system. But in Eastern medicine, what distinguishes it is this meridian system. So it's a circulatory system in the body, just like the blood circulatory system, but it's a system of energy circulation. So it's literally another map of the body, and I think, and it's the reason why I love acupuncture. It's a really, to me, a fascinating, effective, really interesting, beautiful map of the body. People are always like, "Wow, my neck hurt."
Yeah.
My hip hurt, and when I get a headache, does my ankle, feel wobbly, and a lot of the answers in there have to do with the meridian system. It's the way that things are connected in our nervous system, and the way that our nervous system is embedded into our into our musculoskeletal system. So it's just
You know,
another, it gives it a little bit more dimension. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
It totally does. And I personally am a huge fan of acupuncture. I first went decades ago because of back issues, and it was always interesting, it was like my back hurts, they're going to put it between my toes or something, it's always between my fingers and things like that. But during that time period of using acupuncture over the years, I have also become fascinated with the meridian system. So I share that.
Mhm.
And I think that I'm just going to kind of make a statement here, and you can comment in other ways. It almost seems as though, let me just say, as humans, I'll be that general, but as humans, we don't give enough attention to the body and how the body is carrying our experiences and emotions and possibly harming or not allowing us to achieve what we want because it's still within the body. So, and that's where I feel like Western medicine fails to understand the intelligence of the body, if I can just say it that way.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Western medicine is, I think honestly, after practicing, and really struggling with insurance companies and things like that, Western medicine's great and it's amazing. And I think it's not so much like I'm kind of I'm of a mind now to be really careful about. I feel like the hardest thing about Western medicine is they don't have the time to spend with people.
Yeah.
And it's directed towards it's like diagnosis, treatment plan, prescription. So it's kind of the system itself, like the system of practice, even. It may not even be necessarily the whole system of education. The system of practice really, really limits what people can do. And I feel for a lot of people who are practicing Western medicine, because they are really, their hands are tied in a lot of ways. In terms of how they can approach some of the problems that show up in front of them, because they may see a lot of depth to to the person and what's happening with them, but they don't, there's nowhere to go with that. They don't have it. They can recognize it and maybe even touch on it really lightly, but they can't really put it in that treatment plan, and they can't really roll it into their treatment.
Yeah,
So yeah.
it reminds me of something, and this is, I'm not here to, put down Western medicine or anything like that, but just in the interest of our discussion where we're going, I remember years ago, Deepak Chopra, I just happened to be listening to him. I remember that. He was saying, and I didn't quite get it at the time, but now I feel like I personally understand it. He said Western medicine is great when you're cut or have a broken bone. That is where it really, and I thought that was such a beautiful distinction that he made. And now I think of it myself as well. If I've got a cut or a broken bone, I'm going to go to Western medicine. Otherwise, I am far more interested in alternative healing practitioners.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea of clinical levels of, we experience things. By the time we experience a lot of pain, things have been building for a long time. And so, instead of waiting for like really, you know, clinical levels of pain or
Right,
uh,
right.
balance. Sometimes it's better to like really learn, and this is the other thing about acupuncture that I love, to really learn how to listen to your body and take care of it, to sort of take care of things. It's much more preventative. So that I think that you can really learn, we can learn so much more about ourselves. And we should be the experts on our body. We've been in them since, this is ground zero for each one of our lives. We've been in
Yep.
these bodies. We really, learning how to take care of ourselves should be a real kind of joy and pleasure, instead of kind of this thing that's, we need to be able to trust, I think, trust, especially when we're under stress. We need to be able to trust our bodies and trust
Yep.
our assessments of what's happening.
Especially under stress, and I want to go back to, and we're going to get into your entrepreneurial journey. And as we were talking before the show started about being a solopreneur, but I also want to pick up something else that you said that I thought was just fabulous, that you started your practice, got your acupuncture license in your 50s, in your 60s, really, starting down this entrepreneurial journey in this capacity. And I think that speaks volumes to also another misnomer in our culture is that that you're winding down at a certain point. And people will ask me, when are you going to retire? And I'm like, would you take someone that's shooting, hitting the best ball they ever hit and put them on the bench? I feel like it's taken me this long to really comprehend it's getting fun, it's getting exciting. I'm not going to go on the bench. And I'm just doing a shout out to those that are our age, older, younger. There is never a wrong time to explore new things. And I want to thank you for bringing that up, because I think that I would be amiss if I didn't at least bring that point out.
I think it's really important. I mean, with women's health, I mean, women's health is it's shocking often, frequently, how little is kind of tracked in women's health, and how unsupportive a lot of uh, how difficult it is to find good support for women's health issues. So I feel like as we get older, it's just, yeah, I don't want to be benched. I mean, this
Oh,
is a really thinking about age, even in Eastern medicine. When I was studying it, I was like, nah, I'm not buying this. I'm not buying this. Like that whole age thing, like, and then it just goes down. I'm like, no,
no,
it's not
no,
going down.
no, no.
And I really feel like there's another way to think about it. There's another way to be in your body. And honestly, as a person who, gets regular treatment and tries to really be a student of my body and my life, really, and how the environment impacts it, which is super important because that's always changing. But I really feel like I'm learning to trust myself so that as I age, because I think it really is important to know how to age a little bit and to not ignore that there are changes, but be able to deal with them in a way that actually does kind of make you stronger. Because I do think that's possible. I just think you got to get really smart about taking care of yourself, getting the rest that you need, things like that, things that we probably would have benefited from when we were in our 20s and 30s also, but we didn't do, most likely because we just
We
don't,
got away with is what I always say.
like,
In our 20s and 30s, we got away with it a little
yeah.
bit more. And I always say that too, that I've had the benefit of growing up on a farm. And so my grandmother was 99 still cutting the wood and putting it into the stove, because I grew up in a small little country town, right? And because I grew up in this farming type community, there was not a distinction to that degree between women and men. The women were doing the same work along with the men. They were plowing the field, they were doing everything. And so when I grew up, my mother was maybe physically strong, or not stronger in certain times than my father. And so you didn't retire from the farm. You were basically working until you were ill health and could not. So I never had a concept of aging, or suddenly you reached an age and that meant you were, already distinct in some way. Be extinct, I meant to say, because of age, until I got in the city and realized that everybody had this belief, and I never wanted to buy into it. Otherwise, I thought my body would follow that pathway.
Exactly, because where your mind goes, yeah, body follows. It's the spectrum of possibility that you give yourself. But
Yeah.
it's true, and I think that you're right. Like you said, distinct and meant extinct. But I think that we do become more distinct. I think like a little bit more yourself, a little bit more, just a little bit more you, as all of us become a little bit more ourselves, which is great. And then I think, then it really benefits us to learn even about relationships, things like that. It's just staying in the game.
Yeah,
And we
it
need
is.
to, for younger people also, I feel like we really need to be here for people who are growing up right now, and learning how to be ourselves, learning how to solve problems, both physical and relational, and mental, things like that. We need to, yeah, I think it's a really important time for us not to be just retiring out of the whole thing, but
Yeah.
staying in the game for sure.
I think our wisdom, for whatever better or worse. And another point that I like to make, where I'm kind of turning it a little bit on the other side, but I am always telling people when I have my guests come on and they say, okay, I did this, and then I was an employee, then I did this, and then I started my company. It demonstrates from a business perspective the strength and capabilities that people gained many times, can I say, on other people's dollars as an employee, right? And I think too many of the younger entrepreneurs are being told at the universities a lot, I have to say, like you need to get out and you need to start. And so they're coming out with no experience, no backing, no money. I'm not saying some of them shouldn't jump into their own business. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is understand your options, because I have 20 and 30-year-olds that are feeling like if they don't start a business now, it's going to be too late. When I'm trying to, where I'm going on, turn it on the other end is no, in actuality, you may be better, stronger, smarter down the road if you get some experience. So all options should be on the table because it's never too late. And I think our conversation demonstrates that to the younger ones as well.
I agree. I think it is a really hard, the kind of the models that we know with entrepreneurism are kind of like an up and down. Well, there's a lot of them. Like, I mean, there's just kind of um, we're so sensitive to story. And
Yes, we
so
are.
we kind of need to make sure, and nobody wants to be the one thing I think a lot about as I get older is and I don't like this, by the way, is I think about musical chairs. I'm like, oh, I don't like the game. I never think I didn't like the game on musical chairs anyways, but I really don't like it anymore. And I really don't like getting down to just a few chairs. I feel like it's super stressful. And I feel like by the time when the musical chairs feeling sensation is a little bit too, it's just a little bit too much stress, this
Yeah.
whole scarcity of resource thing that we're all experiencing. And yeah, I feel like we need to be able to encourage, like, really, even if it's just kind of joy in the story, in the possibilities or something, telling stories like you're doing, Lori. I think it's a
Yes. Yeah.
thing. You need stories, you need sense of a spectrum of possibility for sure. And young people have to believe, like, it's like, so that whole thing about the only way to succeed is to fail. Like, great, yeah, like that's really pretty
Yeah.
true. Why you
It
know
is. And it's so funny. I hadn't thought about musical chairs, but you make such a great point, Elizabeth. I mean, what if we had a musical chairs where every time the music stopped, okay, ready, guys? You got a new chair.
I know they add one.
Okay, let's change musical chairs. Every time the music stops, a new chair comes, because that to me is life, Elizabeth. We have been, oh my God, I'm on the musical chairs concept now. I'm going to use this because we've been programmed to believe that a chair is removed when in actuality, the universe is bringing new chairs. And so we're scrambling and fighting for a few chairs instead of going back to my opportunity beginning, looking to see the chairs that are placed before us. I love.
Yes. Yes, and I really think that, I mean, certainly in my life, I have experienced that people are willing to help one another. And I think this is another piece that I'm pretty guilty of not being super graceful about taking help from people. Sometimes I really have to work on that one in my personal life. But because I feel like I really see when people either ask for help or they get to a point where they're like, okay, I need help, that's when the magic starts to, like, things really start to happen then. And I feel like, even our SBA office here were really helped me. That's how I met you. I was, and the people, I don't know, just down the street from here, but like it's a small office. Don and Annie, they were super helpful. Like immediately, they connected me with people that I could talk to about my website, about possible marketing. How I might even develop products, which is something that I do a little bit of, which I really feel strongly about because I agree with you that it's something that we should all be thinking about.
Yep. And let's get in a little bit. So, guys, how I met Elizabeth, and she's speaking to a shout out to the Pasadena SBDC, which I'm also an advisor across the whole SBDC network. And Don and Annie are awesome. So, Elizabeth, and you'll tell us a little bit, is also a victim of the fires. And so, what happened is when I first talked to Elizabeth to go through the filing for the SBA loans, Elizabeth's in a situation where she has her tax returns and needs to get them scanned in, right? And so I'm like, oh my God, I call Annie immediately. Annie, can Elizabeth Meredith come over and she's got to use, can you scan in all her tax returns and PDF them right away to me? And it all happened. So that's what Elizabeth was speaking to us. So a shout out to Pasadena for doing that, because I literally then had you get in the car, drive over, Annie take the time, scan it in, PDF it, send it to me so we could get there. But let's talk. I want to get into your business, but we need to spend a minute or two about the experience with the fires, because I really haven't had any guests on that have talked a lot about what it was like and what they're going through. And let's give a little bit of time to that. Tell us about your experience with the fires and how it's impacted you.
So one thing right off the top is my business did not. I am near the fires. It's my clientele that was really impacted by the fires, and so my business indirectly was impacted by the fires.
Yeah.
The fires, the night of the fires, you could see right, right out the window here. We could see the fire starting, and it was super windy. So it was clearly in a really alarming experience being here when those fires were started. We're just south, like about, I don't know if we're around about a mile from Eaton Canyon or a mile south of Eaton Canyon. So it was all visible from here. But thank goodness, not this building was not affected. But the evacuation was all the way up to 2 blocks from here. And a lot of people, it has really changed. It has changed this area. I think the hardest thing from my perspective, and this is I'm somebody, I did not lose my home and I did not lose my business. I still have my business. I just realized I need to change how I approached it because these are really unusual times. But one of the things that I realized about the fires, and it's the same thing that I learned with any sort of disaster or trauma situation, the people involved there's so much happening with them.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's almost impossible to connect and be present with what's actually happening because everyone's disrupted from their own ground zero, from their own lives, from their own bodies, from their own homes, from their own everything. Like it's so like it's so great and happens like within each individual that even though I think there's a sense like things are happening fast where people are like, yes, let's come together, let's do this, let's try to make things happen. There's also really, there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of trauma and a lot of displacement. People whose homes are still intact can't return because of the levels of toxins in the soil, in the houses, and it's really, in order to understand it, you kind of need to hear like a collective voice coming from the place, in some ways. But but you can't, and because that's not happening because of the trauma. It's really hard to get a good sense, like it's so raw. It was just January, and people are just struggling with making lists of what they own. Having just lost a landscape completely, and then our brains aren't really reprogrammed yet to the world. We're still operating on the world as it was. And so our brains are still retraining to the new world. I mean, that is something that's really significant because, our nervous systems haven't really sort of grokked the change, I don't think.
Yeah, I've been involved in the situation from the minute it happened. And so meeting with, 6, 7 people, sometimes more for a while, 7 days a week, going over their circumstances. And I vicariously have gone through exactly what you're speaking of. And they're just trying to figure out how to rebuild. And it's been very traumatic. And I often say to people they just don't understand because I'm hearing story after story after story and trying to figure out how to fit in. So I completely get what you're saying, and my heart goes out to everybody because it's like your whole grounding has been lifted up. Not only are you trying to figure out how you're going to make a living, how the kids are going to go to school, are you going to rebuild, all these questions. Let's jump into your business and let's talk a little bit in the remaining time about what we were chatting about before we began. And that's, guys, what I'm calling, and you've heard me on the show refer to the solopreneur. And when I say the word solopreneur, I'm really talking about the individual who is, let's just say, selling their own skills. Now, they could be making a product. It doesn't mean just service. It means they could be making a product, but they're not having where they're hiring a bunch of employees and they have a whole bunch of overhead. And the reason I keep speaking of the solopreneur, and this has really been true before COVID, but since COVID, not just the fires, but since COVID, remember, I look at a lot of people's financials, a lot, okay? It's the solopreneurs that I'm seeing are making the most money. And I know that is shocking when I say that to people, because once again, we talked about how we've been programmed, the musical chairs. Entrepreneurs have been programmed to believe to make money, it's grow, 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 get on employees, get a brick and mortar, do all this, sell in all these retail, sell international. And I am not, once again, saying any right or wrong, but I am just saying that when we follow one pathway, believing that's the only pathway, not having introspection about where we are financially, where we are goals, where we are personally, and we forego, no, that's not good because this is the route to go. We limit our thinking and we limit our opportunity. And the solopreneur, because they are agile, they don't have all the commitments, they don't have all the employees, they're able to have more money come to the bottom line. But that doesn't mean that there's not also challenges with the solopreneur. So anywhere you want to start, Elizabeth, from your business to the challenges to the benefits, you just jump in and I'm going to follow your lead and we're going to go from there.
Okay, so I think the best way for me to kind of like share what it is, it's kind of the overview kind of my week,
Right.
because twice a week I work on the west side of LA. I'm at the Clinic for Pain and Anxiety as an acupuncturist. It's a wonderful place. It's in Beverly Hills. And it's run by a woman named Hannah Dostar, but I am an independent acupuncturist there. And 2 days a week, that's where I am. And I'm there from dawn till dusk. And I love the people that I see there. And it really keeps me line for keeping for supporting the other days of the week, say. So Body Language LA is in Pasadena, and it's this wonderful place. There are 3 treatment rooms here. There's a really nice patio. My plants here in the window are so happy. It's like crazy. So they're like, there are, I do sort of call it a collective at this point because there's a few other people who use the rooms here, and they'll, for some people, it's donated services for who've dedicated to donate for people who've lost their homes in the fires, and or discounted services, or just people who are practitioners. Like there's this person that I'm talking to who lost their place to practice, and so they might be practicing here. And I've been practicing here all along. So this has been for about a year and a half now. And the first thing I thought after the fires is, wow, I'm fortunate because I have space. Like I have a place for people to gather. I have a place for people to do stuff, like this is where I have something, I, I
Yeah. You know what I like
like,
also
oh,
about your story? Oh, losing you a little bit on the
yeah.
internet. Yeah. You know what I also like about your story that I'd like to point out that is so true of many solopreneurs is that you have, again, let me just use the word like carved out several niches. You've got the place you go 2 days a week, which is stable and helps feed your company as well. You've
Yeah.
got the space that you have other people coming in, possibly renting, brings you some revenue there. You have your clients that you're seeing. And see, that's the other piece to the solopreneur that I'm seeing is that if I have a company, let me just say I'm making widgets, I got however I'm doing, I'm buying it from another country and reselling it or buying it from here. Well, however I'm doing it, I have to stay 100% focused on that widget. And the only thing I can do is maybe add another widget, right? But I'm still focused within that. where solopreneurs have the ability to cut their time, to use their time differently, to find a market. Just like me, I've got the SBDC clients, I've got my private practice, I've got my tax, I got my finance, I'm the same thing. And really what it goes back is to a word that we don't use that often anymore, which is multiple revenue streams. Elizabeth, multiple revenue
Yeah.
streams to me gives stability, gives security, and that's when the musical chairs create more chairs versus taking them away. And so I think that's one aspect. Now, the other side is, and comment on this. Thank you so much for sharing your day in a life because I think that brings this point up is you got to wear all hats. And so, one of the things I like to speak to, especially the younger entrepreneurs that don't quite get this yet, is not all time is billable time. You're having, oh, yeah, I don't even have to go there. So, let's
Yeah.
talk about when you look
Yeah.
at how much is generating money, billable time versus other time, and how you have to account for that as well.
Well, right, and I have to say, right now I'm taking loss. Like it is, sin, and I'm, it's difficult, but I feel like that is part of the journey. I think I was trying to figure these things out, and what I've come to is the best place I can be is um, to really get myself in a headspace that is continually problem solving, that allows me some downtime, that because 3 a.m. can be super stressful, and I can't really afford it to be too much, so I really have to listen to those small things, like kind of back to that some clinical stuff, like catch it way 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 ahead of time. Don't let this stuff get to you, like don't let the stress get to you. It's really important to start mitigating it, period, like as and I feel like that's a really important part of it, because you can't expand that spectrum of possibility if you're tense. Like it's kind of the same thing with body work. If your
Yeah.
muscles are tense, all you're going to feel is pain, and you're not going to be able to move. It's not going to work. There really has to be a certain amount of fluidity in your mind and body, in order to, yeah, always be willing to do, though, to whatever it takes to well, I've been dealing with insurance companies, so in terms of medical insurance, right now, that's something
Oh,
that's
okay. Yeah, that's something a lot of acupuncturists, because I know you deal with, and correct me if I'm wrong,
yeah,
fertility clinics, et cetera. So you also take insurance. And I got to say, Elizabeth, a lot of people, the insurance is the downfall of their company. It,
exactly, yes, exactly. And so really coming up with other ways, but also finding ways to make that work, okay, like to have it and to recognize that, Um, honestly, right about now, just about everybody's pretty stressed out. I think that that's pretty real right now. I think that, or at least I'm accepting that as kind of reality. So I'm like, okay, this is sort of the times.
right.
And even dealing with all the insurance, like there's a lot of, but it must be done, and it will kind of shake out. Like I'm not sure where it's gonna go, but I'm gonna do what I need to do. It's not billable hours, exactly. You're right, but I'm gonna keep trying. I think of it as just like keep stirring the waters, keep turning over rocks, I think that is the best way to go about it. Because it's the only way that it's the only way that things will can grow, if they can.
Well, and we're actually having this discussion, this interview at a very sensitive time because you're right in the middle of this huge disaster, and thankful that your company is even still in existence. And I, like I said, I appreciate you coming on during this time period, but it'll be really interesting because I'm going to have you come back on in 6 months to a year, and I bet you will have also seen how that time allowed you to see other opportunities as well. But yes, I mean, you've got, in addition to trying to figure out how to grow the company and where you're going to focus your time and energy and resources with then the situations that you're going through in addition to the fire. I mean, the fact is, you are a local business. People have to come physically to you to get services. And when your local clientele, if you will, is suddenly no longer there, that's the situations that the companies I found through my experience with the fires are the ones that get most damage because they're serving the local base. The local base overnight disappeared. I mean, how many people in a business ever wake up and then all of a sudden all their customers that were around them are no longer there? And then you got to get people that want to drive to the area. And a lot of people outside the area, I'm sorry to say this, but I've heard this repeatedly, they don't want to drive into the area.
Well, this is something that even before the fires, I really wanted to focus on. I wanted to focus on very, very local businesses. Myself, I work with I refer a lot of people to a local gym, a trainer that I like to work with. He's within walking distance. Even though I'm in Southern California, where people, where it's all about the car, I really believe that part of health is really being part of a community. Like
I do too. I think local, I think we got, well, like from the beginning of my outsourcing, I think the more we can go back to local, the
yeah,
better off we are. I do. I think it creates a strength within the community. I bought a piece of property and I'm on a dirt road in the middle of friggin' nowhere, and we have to maintain this road. And we had a big storm. This was some time ago. It was my first experience on the property. And all of a sudden, these trees go down. And then it was my dawning on me, there's no government official, there's no trucks coming, there's nothing. It's us. But before I had a chance to even worry, because everybody's lived here for how long, I look out and trucks are coming, saws are coming. I get out my wheelbarrow and I realized that that was the most comforting
yeah,
experience I had
yeah.
ever had.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, and I feel like there's some really interesting history, even in this little area. I mean, this neighborhood is bisected by a large freeway, and that's kind of it's kind of sad. And well, whatever. That's me personally. I like every time I run underneath it, I'm like, it's really loud, and like, but it's just the way it is. And but it has a lot of really interesting history in terms of its manufacturing. Before it was a freeway, it was a railway. A lot of this area was agricultural before it became manufacturing. And it's just, there are houses, like when I stopped to talk to people in this immediate neighborhood, mostly walking dogs, but I started to find out like, oh, this house was brought here from another location. Like people were telling me like that, really interesting stories. And I think that stuff is there for anybody who is willing to talk to another person and spend the time kind of, just talk I don't know, it's neighborhoody talk and interest. It's interest, I think.
Well, and going there, I want to make sure we touch on this before we get to the end, which we are. And I wanted to make sure we talked about this. And this is an area of interest to everybody that ever watches this show, and that is the sales and marketing, getting customers, clients, whatever we want to call them. So, what I think is interesting about your situation, and this is why I think it warrants a part of a conversation, is that there is always this concept of the challenge to sell something when you have to educate the person a bit on what it is. The first person to come up with a cell phone was not the one that maybe makes the most money because they first got to get people to be convinced why they need a cell phone. And so these products, well, by nature, alternative medicines, acupuncture, body work, there's certain people like myself is like, I'm in, give me the table, I'm sitting on it, because I had experience with it. But a lot of people that could take advantage of it need to have an understanding what it is. And so there is a very personal sale, but at the same time, you need to do outreach and marketing to attract a high enough client base. So can you just tell us, first of all, if what I'm saying makes sense, but also what do you do to be able to find new clients? Do you market? Do you advertise? What have you learned from being a service providing solopreneur on the ins and outs of getting clients?
So that is such a good question. And you're exactly right. Acupuncture is really, really hard. So when I first started, because I was also talking to SBA people, they were like, go to your local chamber of commerce, try chambering. So I was like, okay, I tried some chambering. And then I also, through chambering, ended up somewhere in there. Somebody told me, like, go to a BNI meeting. I ended up joining BNI. That was helpful. Business Networking
What is
International.
that? What
That was
business networking
helpful.
internet? Okay.
Yeah, BNI is Business Networking International. I think I learned so much from them that I have to learn how to make people want to have acupuncture. Like that's where it's just like I kind of feel like, well, how am I gonna, people are like they hear the word needles and they're like out, they're like down the street. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
it's very hard. You can't convince people that it's not like going and I had blood drawn last night. Like I was faint, I was woozy. I was like, no, you know, I don't, I, it's so different. It's so different. So you're right. It is a hard sell, to be honest. Acupuncture can feel like for a lot of people, it really needs to be normalized. I mean, the more people who come in contact with me, the more people who come into contact with people who have experienced acupuncture, it gets them out of the skinny branches of the trees when it comes to acupuncture. Like, come, try it. I just try to get people to, most of the time, when people actually are willing to come in and just try a session, they love it. I mean, it's so restful and relaxing, and it helps so much with so many different physical issues, whether it's acute pain or just like chronic stuff, or just not being able to sleep or feeling just generally not well
So do you
rested.
find that you have to do kind of like a bigger outreach of marketing to know your existence and then bring in enough to have a conversation to do more of a personal sale? And I'm assuming the marketing is getting a certain amount of people that are already understanding acupuncture. So I'm assuming you have to have a pretty big, wide funnel to be able to then meet with the right person to get the right fit. Which, what I'm saying, guys, in the audience, is that you really have to understand, depending on what you're selling. If you're selling what I call gumballs, maybe your funnel doesn't need to be so wide. But if you have didn't get this percentage because only this percentage is going to buy, you need a much wider funnel. Do you find that that is the challenge in the marketing?
Yes, to get a flow, because in my mind, in order to survive, what I need is a flow. Like that's just, it's flow for me. Just like it has to kind of, yeah, there just has to be enough people coming through the door, enough people coming in, enough people talking to other people about their experience. I feel like there's marketing strategies I mean, one thing about the fires is it kind of pulled me out of my marketing strategies, because then suddenly everything just kind of got thrown off. And so kind of getting back to some of those basic marketing strategies, which are very, very local. And for me right now, just trying to figure out a way to like have something that I send out to like within walking distance, essentially. And then things like coasters for juice bars, and getting just driving people to my website, um, things like that. So just that's something that I'm in the process of doing while I'm still with all the other unbillable hours with the insurance. So it's quite challenging, to be honest. But I kind of love the challenge. I think I'm not sure I would have it any other way, because it's so human. Business is so human. I love that about it.
Yeah, business is human. Well, as we go to our final goodbyes, I kind of was jotting a few notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for coming on. I know the word I wanted to find earlier at this very vulnerable time. This is a very vulnerable time for you right now. I said sensitive, but I knew I didn't have the right word. I wanted to say vulnerable. So I appreciate you for coming on and having this real discussion at this very vulnerable time. There was so many takeaways, but the three that stuck out to me that I think are so important that we discuss is the one that it's never too late. The ability to always be young, always looking at opportunity, always taking advantage of it. I love that conversation. And then I used the word resiliency, but that's what you're showing through this disaster, is how to be resilient and reminding us that disasters happen, and And part of being resilient is nurturing. Self-nurturing is so important. And I love our conversation of the benefit of local and having a local community. I think that is not emphasized enough anymore. So those are my takeaways, but I'd like to send it back to you for any last thoughts you'd like to share with the audience.
I want to encourage everybody to try acupuncture for sure, and like
Absolutely.
talk to your local acupuncturist, and because it's a really great, it's a really it can be a cornerstone for self-care. And also, I think you're bringing up younger people and people getting into business and just sort of taking the risk and just seeing it as an adventure and being willing. It's really pioneering, it's adventuring. It's not like this whole idea of maybe like earning tons and tons of money, like that's great, like but I'm not sure that that's like, I mean, the real or the human experience is much different. It's not about money, it's an important aspect of it, but it's really about the human experience, I think. So yeah.
I think so too. I always say to myself, when I was younger, I would always say, I have this goal, I have this goal, I want this, I want that. And it's been many decades now. The only question I ask myself is, what do you now want to experience? That's what's important. What do I want to experience? And to me, life's an adventure. Live like it is. It is a
Oh,
big friggin' adventure. Live like
and
it is.
creativity, like people come up with great solutions, of problems to solve, all you young people and everybody, like, and creativity can really, really, yeah, creativity is
Creativity
uh
keeps you young for
the
sure.
answer, I think.
Well,
Yes.
Sadie, I'm going to bring you back in to close us down. That was a very interesting traveling experience we had, wasn't it?
Definitely. I mean, I honestly forget sometimes like how much like I would say you never know. You just never know what the vibe is going to be. And I was like, "Oh, I like this one." Like I feel so like uplifted and like just warm fuzzies.
That's
Oh,
awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you again. And we're going to have Elizabeth back on down the road as things are, kind of figured out. And I think it'll be a great retelling of what you learned along the way as well. So, to everybody out there, I want to thank you. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for watching Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. If you're one of my frequent flyers, which, by the way, I got to do a shout out, Chris, you mentioned the quart of milk. Love it. I did see that in the chat. Yes, you got to be able to afford a quart of milk, but I love seeing everybody that's here with me every week. Appreciate that. As you know, Sadie is going to stay behind and make sure the chat stays live. Please do pull out Elizabeth's information in the chat. I am a big proponent of acupuncture. I think it is a great experience, and the needles don't hurt. Okay, the ones between the toes, it takes you a little bit of what, but it's nothing like you're thinking, right? It's a great experience. Reach out to Elizabeth and anyone else. I have to say a shout out to those companies that are, experiencing so many challenges that were hit with the fire. If there's a chance to drive up to the local community, go to the coffee shops, I just got to say a shout out to support the local businesses that got hit so hard. So with that, I am going to say goodbye to now. I will see everybody next week. Thank you again, Elizabeth, and thank you everybody for watching Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
bye, Lori. Hi, Sadie.
Yes.
This says recording is in progress. Am I just signed back on because I was going to answer one of the questions.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Because yeah, but I lost that chat. Oh wait, here we go. Okay. That was fun, by the way. Thank you.
No, definitely, right? Like I said, you never know what it's gonna be. It's just like good vibe. I don't want to say good vibes, creating a good energy to like, have a conversation.
Yeah. So there was someone who asked a question that it's not, I can't find it anymore. It's not in the, I guess I lost the chat.
Um, I think maybe the question you're asking about is, Brenda, it is what is your opinion about adding physical therapy with acupuncture from a business or from a business model? Maybe it should be a for business model.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, acupuncturists and physical therapists working together is like in one location is great. Yeah, definitely. And I don't know how to end, but I don't have the.
Well, you know what? I don't see Brenda here, but I did put your information in there. I put your email address. So
Oh, okay.
hopefully she'll reach out to you. But definitely if you want to like I would say maybe connect with Lori. I'll let her know. I mean, you already have her email address and just be like, "Hey, if anyone emails or if any, just send them directly." Because like I said, you just never know sometimes. So it's
Yeah,
like I go with the theory of just leave yourself open and forward things my way.
yeah, good. So anything that comes up, please, yeah, forward it. I'd love to hear from anybody who has feedback or has questions. That would be great.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then let me see. And then just so you have it, um I do not personally put up the past show links, but when the show goes live on our YouTube channel, I'm going to put this in the chat for you. You can see it here.
Okay. Where is, like, for some reason it's not, what's this? Oops. You're still there, right?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, good. I don't know why I can hear you, but now I'm on this Zoom. I don't know how to get the screen back. What do you think?
Mm.
No, wait, maybe it's just this. Oh, here we go. I got it. Okay, so in the chat, you just put in to see past shows. Great.
Mhm.
So can I send this to people? Because I kind of want to ask.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And then I mean, since I'm all about we're all about sharing information. If you know anyone that wants to become a client, wants to learn more about the show, like we said, we always put it out there where if if you think there's someone that would be a good guest, right? Hey,
Yes.
reach out. So like I said, I'm like, there's all information. Become a client because we love that one-on-one business advising at no cost, right?
Yes. Yes, yes. Good. Well, and then do you know how I save the chat? Is there a way to save it? Do you
There
know?
is not a way to save the chat. That's why I kind of hang out a little bit afterwards, just to,
Oh,
for folks to come in and, make sure that they have everything they need. Because like I see over here, and then Leona, I don't know if you're still here, Leona. Yes, she is still here. Can you email? We don't do any emails, but let me put out the links for the next financial literacy series classes for you. Yeah, because as you saw right now, or you witnessed right now, Elizabeth, it's like once you log out, like all the information is gone. So I just, repopulate and I do things again.
all right. All right. Well, I just did save the chat. Just gave me and said the chat is saved. So we'll see if
Oh,
that
beautiful,
actually saves the
beautiful. Yeah,
chat.
I know.
But
And like I said, I have
anyways,
a love-hate with technology sometimes because I'm like, oh, where did you save it? Is it a saved file? Like I'm like, oi. So do a search right
I
now.
know, right? Yeah, it says it's saved. Right, it's saved somewhere. I don't know where, but yeah. Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much.
No
I really
worries. Like I said, like we're gonna have you back.
Good. All right. Well, have a good day.
You too. Happy Wednesday.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.